August 6, 2024. Well, I think I'm going to get into the state of the political race now. We've been, having this so-called, I call it the Kamala-gasm or the honeymoon period, what do you want to call it? And so we're getting, there's been, watching the polls change and trying to make some evaluation of where we are now. Of course, I'm recording this pending the announcement of her VP pick, and so. And of course, during the run I'll have on this, there'll obviously be some update. Obviously, we'll know that then and have some idea what effect, if any, that will have. And also at the end of this, I do have something to, at the end of this video, I'll put a little bit of an update on the Trump assassination attempt, something that I might have a new piece of information that I hadn't mentioned in my last video on it, which is still pretty good overall, just one little nuance. Everything else I said in that one's still the same. So on the polls, looking at where we are with, right now with the latest polls we've got, and I use the Real Clear Politics average of polls, and I also tend to make judgments about them within the polling, so to see what I think. So let's, taking a look at the basic idea, the head-to-head race between Harris and Trump has basically now Harris is ahead by 0.2%, essentially dead even. And the later polls have shifted more toward Harris. However, that includes a Survey USA poll, so-so poll, and the Morning Consult poll, not so good. And then and I think that's, and earlier we had the Daily Cause poll, which is a very Democrat organization, so I'm a little skeptical of that one. On the other hand, you do have a Rasmussen poll that's very positive for Trump, and of course, Democrats would be very skeptical of that one. So it all kind of plays into the story here, but 0.2% as of now kind of gives us an idea of probably where the race would look on a head-to-head race. Of course, we have to realize that it isn't going to be just head-to-head. There are these other candidates. Actually, there's a bunch of them. Weirdly enough, the Libertarian, who's often on the ballot various places, apparently hardly is even polling. However, there are some people. I mean, obviously, RFK Jr. is the most clear, well-known figure, and then there's Cornel West, and then there's a Green Party candidate. There too. So, and of course, that's where we get into the five-way race. And of course, in that one, Harris gets a 0.2% gain on that one, which is to 0.4%. And of course, in that one, you also have the Green Party candidate, Jill Stein, back as always, huh? And I think they're on the ballot in some states too. And of course, Kennedy has been fighting to get on the ballot various places. So that kind of gives you an idea of it's still pretty well tied. And I would say that if in reality, these are nationwide polls, if in reality Trump only comes in 0.4% behind Harris, he'll win the election. Because electorally, he's doing very good in the swing states, and he's ahead in almost all of them still. Of course, we probably don't have as much polling there, and some of the polling that we do have isn't even being considered credible. And then there's this Bloomberg Morning Consult poll, which has, get this, Harris ahead by 11 points in Michigan. Fat chance that's accurate. So, at any rate, that kind of gives you a general lay of the land here. One of the weird idiosyncrasies of the Rasmussen poll, I thought, was they polled both 2 ways and 5 ways. And in the two-way poll, Trump was well ahead, but in the 5-way poll, he shrinks down to being ahead by 1%. And ironically enough, Harris actually goes up a little bit when you have it 5-way, which is kind of strange. One of the variables in these, which I think should be considered, is, of course, the impact of these third-party candidates. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like. I appreciate that. It helps the algorithm. We're looking for more subscriptions. We're still looking for that magic 100, and we're gaining, but we need a little bit more. And of course, you click the bell for notifications, and of course, also post these on Rumble if you follow Rumble under the same name. All that's in the description below. Yeah. So anyhow, getting on with this. Yeah. The one variable I see in here is the Kennedy. I think is because when you look at Kennedy in the five-way polls, that's in this average, he varies from hitting as low as 2% of the vote to as high as 10%. I mean, this is massively more variable than almost any other factor. And of course, how that shakes out and who he takes the most from will become significant. For instance, does his candidacy ultimately fade into obscurity, often like some of the independent candidates tend to do? Or will he maintain a solid percentage, like 4% or 5%, all the way to the election day? People really vote that. And of course, it'll depend on what states he's actually, of course, on the ballot. And that may have an impact too. On the other hand, it may also be that if the state isn't very competitive, maybe he will get a fair percent of the votes. But when it gets very competitive, maybe people will actually make actual choices because of the intensity of the campaign in those states. So that's the kind of thing that's I think maybe could be decisive in a close election. Obviously, she's having a good period because she's avoided any major gaffes during the period by not really doing anything but reading off the teleprompter primarily, and we haven't had any news conferences or anything like that, and we haven't, of course, we're well before debates, so that will be significant coming up. I think that in spite of all the bravado from the Democrats that Trump's afraid of debate, actually I think Trump really wants debate. What he's really negotiating for is more debates, not just one, but maybe three, and maybe some changes in format and so forth. I don't know what you really want. I sort of like the format of the one he had with Biden, not because of the outcome per se, because we wouldn't be in this mess if that hadn't happened, but just it was a good, clean debate where the moderators asked questions and stayed out of the answers pretty much, and then each side could state what they said and not be interrupted by the other one when they were talking. I think that, to me, makes it clear. When they're over talking each other, people don't even hear exactly what everybody's saying, and I think it's not as good. But that's me. Maybe other people prefer different, more of a, bare knuckles debate, let's call it. And so anyhow, but I do think when you look at that variability in the Kennedy thing from 2 to 10% in the polls, something's off with that, obviously. I mean, I think the average is somewhere in the 4% range if you just use the Real Clear Politics average, just average the numbers over all the different techniques. And that might be what'll happen. Because but it might shrink some, in the 2020, in the 2016 race, I've often made the case that while the actual outcome may very well be due to a little bit of fraud, because if you have a fraud of as much as 100,000 votes in the right states, that easily would flip the election. But I don't believe it was significant in terms of the actual, magnitude of the overall popular vote. And that's where I differ from a lot of people on Team Trump. I mean, I'm on Team Trump. I just gave him a campaign contribution the other day. But the point is that I don't think that was it. But if you want to say, did Trump legitimately, if he had a God's eye view of all the legal votes and only the legal votes, would he have won Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia? I think it's quite likely. Michigan, less likely, in my opinion. But he might have been closer than he ended up, that kind of thing. So that just kind of clarifies a little bit of my view on it, and of course, so we'll have to see again how whether this bear incident has any effect on Kennedy's popularity, whether good or bad. I think that's an interesting story about how Robert Kennedy Jr. Apparently picked up a bear off the highway roadkill and somehow left it on a bicycle in Central Park, which caused a bit of a fracas 10 years ago in the media. and now it's come out that he actually is the one that put it there, and he tried to preempt this by talking about it. So that'll be an interesting to see just what does that affect him at all or not, or will that have the same effect of the 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 dog incident did for Christy Nome, which I think was a little unfair to her. I mean, really, but I mean, okay, if she took it to a vet and he put it down with a lethal injection, would we all be? I don't know. It was a vicious dog, obviously, that was attacking people. And at any rate, I'm not for that, but I'm just saying that these kind of things sometimes can have an effect. I don't know if this one will, because the bear was dead anyhow. Of course, they could argue maybe he's the one that really hit it. Huh? Yeah. Anyhow, but the thing is, sometimes I kind of think that the Kennedy. I mean, obviously, my general theory, we talk about all the people are independents, how a third of the voters or 40% of the voters are independents. But the truth is, a lot of the independents aren't as independent as they might sound like. It's not like all 40% of them are equally likely to vote for either Harris or Trump, right? And so the question is, how many of those voters does glom onto these independent candidates? Well, the Cornell, Stein and West, I think, are going to pick up ultra left wing type figures. You know, and if they were not there, I suspect they'd be voting for Harris if they're voting at all. Most of them, almost all of them. The Robert Kennedy may be picking up a little bit, and I think what we've had here in the last, since since Biden pulled out, is that the Democrat, a lot of people were really wanting to vote for it, looking for a Democrat, but they couldn't imagine the somewhat senile, semi-senile state that Biden's in voting for him, and so that pushed him down a lot. But besides, toward the end of that, the Democrats were attacking him just as much as the Republicans were, maybe more. And they definitely withheld the campaign funding, which they then unleashed, of course, once Harris was the presumptive nominee, and apparently she's now solidified it. And so, but like I said, how the Kennedy vote pans out will probably could even swing the election. I mean, and that's right now it looks like it's maybe beginning to hurt Trump more whereas earlier maybe it was hurting the Democrat side more, because maybe some of the Democrats that weren't voting for Biden because of his health situation maybe have temporarily got into the Harris enthusiasm for the moment. But that may change as the campaign goes forward. There's certainly plenty of opposition research material available on Harris, so we'll see. And now we also have our choice of vice president, which you'll probably know by the time most of you even see this video. Now, it seems right now that the smart money is between Shapiro of Pennsylvania and Waltz of Minnesota. And one commentator I heard suggested that they were going against Shapiro. The problem with Shapiro, well, first of all, the advantage is he's the governor of Pennsylvania, and he certainly beat the Republican handily in the last election. However, that was probably more that the Republican defeated himself than anything else. But he's a strong figure, and but the problem is for the Democrats anyhow, is he's Jewish, and he has a historic paper where he said the real truth about in my opinion, about the Palestinian-Israeli situation. There's no way these two are going to live in peace with each other anytime soon. Maybe way down the road, but it's not within the next generation, I don't think. I mean, we could get into the details on that. I don't think so, and that's what he stated. But now that's not a popular position to take politically, particularly in the Democrat Party, or maybe not even in the Republican Party, but sort of in the Democrat Party. And then you have all the anti-Semitism we saw on the college campuses among all these young activists. So my point is, if she were to pick him, while it might help her pick up Pennsylvania, which is 19 electoral votes, it also could cause a lot of turmoil at the convention. It might turn the convention rather into a bump into a bust. Waltz won't have that effect. She's comfortable with Waltz, the far left, the Democrat Party, or Bernie Sanders likes Waltz. And so, as a Democrat, he's very liberal, but and we got some good lines against him too, I believe. But the point is that won't cause any real stir in the Democrat Party. Yet it probably won't do any good for a campaign directly either. I mean, other than just having a prominent figure who's a little bit older and a little bit, let's say, maybe not as ambitious. Because the thing with Shapiro is Shapiro will probably overshadow her, I think, in a way that Walz maybe won't. So, at any rate, that's coming up. You'll know the answer soon, but that's my viewpoint on however it turns out. I don't think, but on the other hand, I don't think Walz will really do anything to really enhance her campaign any either. It just maybe won't be a negative. Although he'll be attacked as being ultra liberal and rightfully so. I mean, after all, she promoted giving money to a fund to get the rioters in Minneapolis out of jail, and I think he failed to really bring in the guard effectively and put it down instantly. So, they kind of let the city burn. So, that's that. But anyhow, that's kind of how that's panning out. We'll have to see. My own opinion is, though, Trump probably could win the election if the Democrat outpaces him by 2% in the popular vote. And the reason for that is you have California, which by itself will probably be 2% of the national popular vote in favor of the Democrat. And you can throw in other states like New York and Massachusetts and so forth, and so that aren't that competitive. So I wouldn't panic at this level at all. And I think Trump's numbers will probably improve eventually once we see more of Harris, particularly when we get her into the debate. I think she can read from a script pretty well, but I think when she's on her feet, and particularly she's never debated anybody like Trump. I thought that Pence did very good against her in that debate, but I tell you, against Trump, that's going to be a whole different experience for her, I think. And Trump won't hold back, as we well know. So anyway, that's kind of my assessment here. So of the state of the race right now, I would recommend, of course, if you have the money, contribute to the Trump campaign. He's got a joint fund with him and the RNC, so the money will also go, as well as supporting his campaign, to obviously supporting other tight races and so forth. And of course, there's other things. You can support your local Senate and House candidates or local candidates and so forth, if you have the money and inclination. But be careful of giving them your cell phone number, because you'll get a bunch of texts. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't like having my text full of daily things like that. On the email, it'll fill up you'll get a bunch of spam type email, but I don't know, you can create a folder called political and put it all in there and just look at some of it and delete the rest or whatever. Anyway, so that's kind of that. And as I said, also to finish this up, I did want to make, I mentioned at the beginning, the one piece of information I didn't have when I did my last video on the assassination attempt on Trump is that I discussed that after the assailant fired 8 rounds with his rifle, which are clearly distinguishable, a group of 3 that are slower, and a rapid fire group of 5. And I discussed all that. I said afterwards, I thought they were 2 shots from what I would call a suppressor rifles by like the Secret Service or whatever. I believe that the first one of those shots that happened right at the end of his group of 5 wasn't from the Secret Service, like I thought was likely before, but was probably from a SWAT officer from either the local or state police that were supporting the effort. And then the final suppressed shot, I believe, was Secret Service. And I find it's interesting. Hardly anybody's talking about that, but I've seen some commentary that suggests that's the case, and I think that might clear up the confusion between what the Secret Service has said about it and what we're actually hearing on the videotape that I posted in the last video there. So anyway, so that's it for now. I will, of course, as always, be posting this on both YouTube and Rumble, and the address of my social media accounts are in the description below. and you can follow me posting. I post most frequently on X, and I post from time to time on the others as well. Mostly they're just my videos, but other things I think that are maybe more appropriate to a particular forum or something. So all for now, until next time.